That's a question that often comes up. What does the U.S. have to gain, and doesn't it have a lot to lose from promoting these policies that are blocking the settlement? I would say, without going into all the subtleties and nuances, in my opinion, the United States, even the U.S. elites, do not have any real commitment to maintaining the occupation. And a moment's reflection will tell you that. If tomorrow Prime Minister Netanyahu were to announce, we are dismantling all the settlements, all the settlers are returning to Israel, we will return to the June 1967 border, it's very unlikely that President Obama would be depressed by that news. No, I mean, the fact that you're laughing at it, I think indicates a reality. In the case of the Israel-Palestinian conflict, I think it's correct to say that the main force behind the U.S. position is the Israel lobby. It was the Israel lobby that wrote the House of Representatives resolution tomorrow. AIPAC wrote it. Do you think the people who are going to vote on that resolution have never read the report? When it comes to broader regional questions, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, well, then it's a different story. Then it's the United States that's making the decisions, and there is a convergence of interest between the U.S. and Israel, say in the question of Iran or the question of Iraq. On regional issues, in my opinion, and here's where I strongly disagree with my friend, he is my friend, John Mearsheimer. Mearsheimer and Walt spoke on the Israel lobby. On regional questions where big U.S. interests are at stake, not some crummy settlement in the West Bank, but oil, we're talking important interests. The U.S. ruling elites are in charge. It's not the lobby. On the question of Israel-Palestine, I think it's a reasonable conclusion that it's basically the lobby. And look, lobbies have power. I mean, we shouldn't kid ourselves. That's why, you're in New York City and you're in the subway, you don't look anybody straight in the eye in the subway, because they may pull out a gun and shoot you. That's because of the gun lobby. Sometimes I used to teach at schools, and gave a student a bad grade. He came into my office wearing a trench coat, and I was wondering this might be it. That's because of the gun lobby. That's why those things, there are a lot of crazy things in our society because of lobbies. And AIPAC is one of those lobbies that can do crazy things. But I don't think on fundamental interests, lobbies can go that far.
The gentleman on the right, standing.
Could I get your comments on Anwar Sadat in that agreement that they made, Egypt made with Israel, in terms of, is that an important thing? Can we learn anything from that in terms of going forward? And secondly, is it true what ex-President Clinton said, that we were very close to a resolution of this issue? It's just that the PLO just couldn't quite garner the courage to do this.
Mm-hmm. Well, the problem with the first question is, I'm afraid, even though the audience is small to begin with, I'm going to lose virtually everyone in the details because it's rather long ago. The question is, there was a president of Egypt named Anwar Sadat, and in 1977 and in 79, he reached a peace agreement with Israel, and the agreement has held up since 1979, so it's now about 30 years it's held. And the question is, can we learn anything from that agreement? I think we can learn three things from that agreement. Number one, Mr. Sadat made the same offer after the 1973 war as he made before the 73 war. He made an offer to have a peace agreement with Israel in February 1971. Israel turned it down. Israel only changed its position after Egypt went to war, and the Israelis realized, okay, Egypt is a formidable military force, and we have to reach a peace agreement with it. The famous line by Moshe Dayan, who was the foreign minister, he wrote in his memoir, he said, in order to drive a car, you need 4 wheels. You remove one wheel, and the car is stuck. And he said, we're going to remove the Egyptian wheel from the Arab front so they can never wage war against us. The second main lesson we can learn from there is Egypt demanded, as a condition for reaching peace, that every last square inch of Egyptian territory had to be under Egyptian control. Israel had to fully withdraw. There was a tiny, tiny little triangle of land called Taba. Egypt said, you gotta return Taba. Everything that was ours has to be returned. And the third lesson is exactly what Ma'oz said. They signed the agreement. It's 30 years, many wars later, the agreement has held on. Which tells you something about the Arabs' ability to hold to agreements. But only if there's a full withdrawal from occupied territory.
There is a question here which is related to some extent, or did you want to answer that one of the gentleman's question?
What was
the 2000 negotiations?
The 2000 negotiations, I think without going into the details, I'll just quote you what Israel's own foreign minister at the time said. Shlomo Ben Ami, and you can hear it because I was actually debating him, Israel's former foreign minister. You can see it on the web. I'll quote him. He said, if I were a Palestinian, I would not have accepted what Israel offered at Camp David. What Israel was offering was unacceptable.
There's a related question about Arab countries from a written question. Israelis have caused many problems, destruction, etc. However, despite their number and economic power, the Arabs have been weak, divided, and they could not exert influence on the peace process. What are the mistakes or problems that Arabs, Palestinians in particular, have made now and in the past? That's a multi-big question.
I find it hard to be critical of the Palestinians as a people. The leadership is loathsome. It's hard to imagine a more corrupt, more debased leadership than one the Palestinians have. But it's very difficult, very hard to be critical of the Palestinians, given how much they've had to endure and how much they've suffered. And I personally was very touched when I read Goldstone's own comments. He said when he was told, or when he decided to go to Gaza, he said, I was very afraid. I'm Jewish, it's Hamas. A lot of people have been kidnapped there, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And then he said, I was very surprised. I was treated so warmly by the people. If you're interested, it's interesting to listen. Go to his interview with Bill Moyers. It's on the web, M-O-Y-E-R-S, his interview with Bill Moyers. He said, I was treated so warmly and graciously. He said, after that, I felt perfectly fine going there. And in the Goldstone report, at the very end of the report, he says, if I could just quote it because I found it personally kind of touching. He said he paid tribute to the